Hey kids, I've got a picture here to show you today. This picture I had found when I was up looking for something in St. John's attic, and I stumbled across this picture uh, lying against the wall, and I pulled it out and I found it and said, "Wow, what a wonderful picture." It's a little dirty, but I think after we clean it up, we should hang it somewhere here at St. John's. What this picture is a picture of the account of Jesus that we're going to hear about this Sunday, of Jesus walking with two of his disciples to the road that leads to Emmaus. Now, this picture shows the event that happened just 3 days after Jesus' death, the very same day of Jesus' resurrection. These two disciples were walking to Emmaus for some reason, we don't know why. But they were sad because they loved Jesus. They were learning from Jesus, and they believed that Jesus was the Messiah. But they were confused because Jesus had just been sentenced to death and crucified on the cross. And they didn't understand. They didn't understand what this meant or why Jesus had to do this. And so Jesus begins walking along the road with them. And he asked them, they can't recognize him yet. He's kept them from recognizing him. And he says, "What are you talking about?" And the two tell him that they're sad that he had died and they didn't know why. And Jesus says to them as they're walking, "You fools, haven't you read the Bible before?" And what Jesus does is, starting from Moses and the prophets, Jesus explains the whole Bible to them. And he explains it to them how it's all about him, all about how Jesus was promised to come down to earth, to be born man, and to die for our sins, and then to rise again so we can have new life with him. And as Jesus is talking, you might not be able to see it in the video, he's got his finger pointing upward. He's trying to tell these disciples, I'm about to teach you about heavenly things, not earthly things. These are things that take faith to believe, not just things we can see with our eyes. And so he's pointing up towards heaven where he came from. But as he's walking, these disciples slowly start to get it, and they get excited, and they wonder if all of this is true, that Jesus really did rise from the dead. And then as they sit down to supper, Jesus takes bread, he blesses it and breaks it, and gives it to his disciples to eat. And at that moment, Jesus lets them know, he lets them recognize that it was him talking to them on the road. And of course, at that moment, they're very excited because they did see Jesus. But then at that moment, he leaves them, he vanishes. And what they do is they run back and tell all the other disciples, "We've seen the Lord. He was made known to us in the breaking of the bread." And that's a really important part of the story for us, because when we go to church, how these two disciples got to know and recognize Jesus on this road is the same way we do. We go to church and we read the Bible, and we think about what that Bible has to say about Jesus and how he loves us and has died for us. And then, of course, we meet Jesus, not with our eyes, but with our faith. In the breaking of the bread, when we receive Jesus' body and blood in the bread and wine at church. And so in all these things, Jesus is teaching these two disciples, but he's also teaching us how we can come to see him, not with our eyes yet, we will on the last day, but how to see him by faith and know that the Bible and the breaking of the bread all point to him.